everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Serena and I love to read. So you may notice that my sit down setting is a little bit different. I'm sitting here because my room with all my books is actually quite messy and I didn't feel like cleaning it up. So I decided to sit in my living room on my yellow chair, which I love to read on. It's not as bookish, the background, but I think it's still comfy. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about my September and October wrap up. And I know September already passed, October already passed, we're in November, but I tried to film the video earlier in October and that month ended up being very busy and I only ended up reading 2 books anyways, so I figured combining both months would be fine. But actually the first thing that I wanted to talk about was, firstly, I just want to thank everybody who has subscribed to my channel so far. I have about 89 subscribers and I'm so happy that many of you have decided to subscribe to my channel. Although I had tried to create a book channel a few years ago, rejoining the booktube community is something that I always wanted to do and I had a lot of anxiety about doing it. So I want to thank everybody that has subscribed to my channel, liked, commented. I really appreciate it, and I'm hoping that by the end of the year that I could hit 100 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I like to make reading vlogs and any kind of reading books content. If you like reading and book content, you know, I think you'll like my channel. I try to make everything feel cozy and comfy. For anybody who is watching that's not subscribed, you know, feel free to subscribe. I'm hoping to make it to 100 subscribers by the end of the year. So yeah, if you can help me out, that would be amazing. Okay, so the first book that I read this month was Rouge by Mona Awad. This book was actually one of my most anticipated reads for the month. Well, not even for the month of September, but also for like the year. Once I heard that this book was coming out, I immediately put it on my want to read list. I first read All's Well and I really enjoyed All's Well. And then I read Bunny and I really enjoyed Bunny, and I read Rouge and I enjoyed it. I really did. In an interview with Jalen from Bar and the Bookcase, Jalen asked the author what she learned after writing all of her books. And her response was, "Be careful what you wish for. What we desire so much might not necessarily be good for us, might make us lose ourselves. What is the cost of that kind of desire and that kind of transformation?" So this quote to me sums up Rouge in a nutshell. This story is about a young woman who is obsessed with beauty, but she's also coming to terms with her mother's death. And after losing her mom, she spirals out of control after falling under the spell of a beauty cult, or a secret beauty cult called La Maison de Méduse. So Belle is obsessed with watching skincare / beauty videos on YouTube. She's obsessed with an unattainable beauty, and the cost of that obsession makes her lose herself in the process as we continue to read. Some of the key themes that really stood out to me when I was reading the book were themes of, you know, the fairy tale, the obsession with beauty, the impact of societal standards, and the toxic relationship between mother and daughter. Another thing that really stood out to me was how often the color red was mentioned in the book. If you look at it from, you know, a deeper perspective, red can signify a lot. Red can signify love. Red can signify a red rose, but red can also signify blood. And in this book, I feel like red hits all of those meanings. The reason that I enjoyed this book, I seem to really like an unhinged, out of control, unreliable character. Although it frustrates me when you can't get the other perspective of the other people around Belle, we only see this world through her eyes. We can see it as, you know, as we're reading it, we can see that she's becoming unhinged. We can see that she's out of control. The author still forces us to just continue looking at this world through her perspective. I think that if you like an unreliable character, a toxic mother-daughter relationship, an unhinged female character and a little bit of magical realism, I think that you would enjoy this book. To me, she's a great writer, and I think she's kind of like an automatic buy for me at this point. So that was Rouge by Mona Awad. So the next book that I read and that I also enjoyed was Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is the second Silvia Moreno Garcia book that I've read. I read Mexican Gothic and I really enjoyed that book. I didn't enjoy this book as much as I enjoyed Mexican Gothic. For most of the book, it is a pretty slow read. Silvia Moreno Garcia goes into a lot of detail. There's a lot of history that she goes into as well that is included in the book. The book is set in the 1990s and we follow the main character Montserrat and her best friend Tristan. Montserrat is the main leading character of the story and Tristan is her best friend, and we do see his perspective throughout the book as well. Montserrat is a sound editor who works in, I think it's like B films, or what would be considered B films in Mexico City. Tristan is a telenovela actor, but he got into some trouble and he's now kind of like a struggling actor. So the story explores a cursed underground cult and is intertwined with racism, colorism, gender bias, and it is a slow read, but it is very rich with detail. Silvia Moreno Garcia goes into a lot of detail, especially at the beginning of the book, where we're going through the history of how the curse started. We're going through the history of the cult itself and its connection to the Nazis. And we're also going into detail about the characters themselves. Montserrat is working, as I mentioned, as a sound editor, but she's not getting along with her bosses. She's facing a lot of colorism and gender bias as well. And there are some kind of undertones there of homophobia as well. Then you also have Tristan. He's a struggling actor now. He was very popular at one point and he was dating a very famous actress. They were both in telenovelas and he's not as popular anymore. He's now struggling to just find work in the film industry. Included in the story is the presence of Nazism in Latin America, which adds a layer of intrigue to the story. And the use of silver nitrate film becomes a pivotal element in the occultists, or in the cult's, pursuit of magic, resulting in what I find to be a highly character-driven story. What I really enjoyed about this book was the film noir aspects to this book. I never read a book like this. I really feel like I was watching a movie almost. It seems weird to say because it is a book about movies, but I really do feel that the author did a really good job of really bringing to life the film in this book. The vibes in it were just, it was film noir vibes like all the way through. That's just how I felt when I was reading it. It was just a different way of reading a book. For me, it just ended up being really quite good and very different from the last book that I read of hers. We do have a little bit of those gothic elements. There's a little bit of gore in there as well. It wasn't as intense as Mexican Gothic, but it was still a very good book. For me, I really enjoyed it, and that was Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno Garcia. So the next book that I read was Evil Under the Sun. This was the first Agatha Christie that I had read in a very long time. The first one that I had ever read was years and years ago. I read Murder on the Orient Express. I think at the time I did enjoy it, but I had a really hard time following, and I was also young and naive, and I couldn't really appreciate, you know, the murder mystery cozy aspect of Agatha Christie book. At the time, I hardly kind of knew who she was and really didn't go into that much research about it, to be honest. But now that I'm older and more mature, I actually followed this book. I actually tabbed it as well. Well, just a little bit of tabs here and there. And I really did enjoy this book. Although, to be honest, I can't remember who killed who. I don't remember. Evil Under the Sun is one of Agatha Christie's most popular murder mysteries, and this story unfolds against the backdrop of a beautiful hotel on a fictional island called Lethercombe Bay. So our famous detective, Hercule Poirot, he actually happened to be vacationing at this hotel, and a glamorous actress named Arlena Marshall is found dead on the beach. And as expected, Hercule Poirot takes on the case, and all of the hotel guests are suspects. As usual with all these characters, they all harbor some kind of motive for wanting to kill this actress or for wanting to kill the victim, which makes for a very interesting read. The story navigates through characters with jealousy, betrayal, hidden relationships. There's a little bit of cheating going on. Yeah, this book definitely kept me on the edge, and as you can see, it's not that long of a read. Well, yeah, it's not that long of a read. I think I ended up finishing it in about 2 days or so. So it's a pretty quick read, and it's a really great book, and I think that it will keep readers on the edge. And I think if you haven't read an Agatha Christie, that Evil Under the Sun, I think, is a good one to start off with. You could kind of get to know who each character is. I didn't find myself getting lost wondering, wait, who is this character? And, you know, which one is who and whatnot. They each had their own kind of voice, which was really good. What helped me though was definitely tabbing. I was tabbing because I just really wanted to kind of figure out on my own who killed the actress. Now that I've forgotten, I guess I have to reread the book. Yeah, that was Evil Under the Sun, and if you haven't read Agatha Christie, this would be a really great one to start off with. So yeah, that's Evil Under the Sun by Agatha Christie. The next book that I read, and I don't have it here because I borrowed it from the library, and that was The Spite House by Johnny Compton. So in this story, we are following our main character, Eric Ross, who is on the run with his 2 young daughters. We don't know what they're on the run from, but we know that he's leaving everything behind to come live at this Spite House after he comes across a strange ad looking for a caretaker for the house. This is a gothic thriller, and the author mentioned in an interview that he was very much inspired by Shirley Jackson. That he was very much inspired by Shirley Jackson. Oh my god, Shirley Jackson. He was very much inspired by Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. Now, I haven't read The Haunting of Hill House. I did watch the series on Netflix. I didn't finish it because I found it to be really quite scary. I'm not a big fan of watching horror movies, but I am a fan of reading them. I would say it's not like heavy on the horror, but it is still pretty scary. His job is pretty much to kind of take notes of all the haunted things that happen in this house. And it seems like, yeah, it's a pretty easy job, and he's gonna make some good money, and this money he's hoping that he gets from doing this job will help him and his daughters get on their feet again, essentially. There's a lot of history behind this house, and it seems like maybe the house itself is alive. I really enjoyed this book. It wasn't as scary for me as I expected it to be, but it was pretty intense. There was a lot of like intense moments throughout the book, especially nearing the end. This one too, I felt like all of the action happened very much closer to the end, so you do kind of have to keep on reading to find out what happens. The author does go through a little bit of background on the main character, and as we go through the story, we also find out, you know, what they're running from. I think I did enjoy this book. It wasn't as scary for me as I expected, but it's still a pretty enjoyable book. It was perfect for Halloween time, which is right around the time that I was reading it. Or not even Halloween. I was reading it in September, but I was getting into Halloween vibes by then anyways. The writing was still pretty good and still kept me really engaged. The author really does go into detail with that a lot. So yeah, I enjoyed reading The Spite House. So I think that, you know, if you're a horror fan, this story might not be as scary, but if you're kind of maybe like a light horror, or you read light horror and you're trying to like slowly get into, you know, scarier and scarier and scarier themes, this might be a pretty good book for you to pick up. So yeah, that is Spite House by Johnny Compton. So the next book that I read, and I actually read it for a book club, and that book is Run Towards the Danger, Confrontations with a Body of Memory by Sarah Polley. For nonfiction, and especially for memoirs, I tend to kind of just rate them high, and I tend to enjoy them for the most part because it's a story about the person themselves, and it's hard to judge that person's story. I felt that it was a very well-written memoir that really got to my heartstrings and that really put into perspective growing up as a child actor. So Sarah Polley was a child actress, and she was an actor on the CBC show Road to Avonlea. And in this book, she talks about growing up as a child actress. She talked about the trauma that she experienced on another set of the movie The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. It came out in 1988. While filming this movie, she did experience a lot of trauma. She goes through that trauma being a child actress, being treated like an adult when she was just a kid, as well as some uncomfortable moments with a crew member as well. Through this book, she goes through 3 traumatic times in her life. So we have when she was a child actress, then we have the traumatic experience she had when she was sexually assaulted, and then we come into another part of her life where she suffered a concussion. So throughout her life, she's been going through these huge traumatic moments, and Run Towards the Danger was one of the advice that she got, or that she received from a doctor after she had a very severe concussion. She's now a director, and she directed the movie Women Talking. One of the things that I'll mention is that she does talk about like the trauma of being a child actor, and her advice for parents who have children who are very interested in becoming actors at a very young age. Her advice is pretty much to not do it, to avoid it at all costs, essentially, especially when they're so young, because they're very vulnerable at a very young age, and the adults around them are not always the best people to be around. I didn't know what to expect from this book. This was, like I mentioned, a book club pick for a book club that I had just joined, so I wasn't sure what to expect, and to be honest, it ended up being quite a surprise and a very good book. She really breaks down everything that had happened in her life and how those things affected her. Yeah, it was really good. It was a really great memoir. I really enjoyed reading it. I also listened to the audiobook, which Sarah Polley narrates, and it was very, very good. I would suggest to anybody to, if you're not going to read the book, you can listen to it, and it's great. She's really great at narrating her own stories. So yeah, that one was Run Towards the Danger by Sarah Polley. So the next book that I read was Really Good Actually by Monica Heisey, and I enjoyed this book. It's set in Toronto, which I was surprised by. You know, I don't read a lot of stories that are set in Toronto, so that was really nice. We follow Maggie. She is going through a divorce and it is affecting her. She's trying to cope with the separation. She has like a string of other kind of relationships that she's trying out. Unfortunately, she's also broke. She doesn't have a house to stay in. She has to move out, so she moves into like a house that her boss was renting out as well with like other roommates or something. I can't exactly 100% remember exactly where she moved to, but she is going through very difficult times. I don't want to say she's not unhinged per se in the same way that maybe Belle from Rouge is, but I think she's just coping, she's lost, and she's just trying to find herself. It's a really good book. I ended up really enjoying my time reading it. There were quite a few funny moments that made me laugh out loud. I would say that I definitely did enjoy this book, as frustrating as the character was to read in many moments. I would say she did definitely do a lot of things that just made me really upset and question why. I still definitely enjoyed reading the book. The added bonus of it being set in Toronto was really great as well. The last book that I read in the month of September, was actually Bliss Montage by Ling. I tend not to like gravitate towards a lot of anthologies and a lot of stories. This one was quite impressive, and I think Ling is just an author that I think I am almost going to put on automatic buy as well. She does have another book, I think it's called Severance, and I definitely want to read that, especially after reading this. So this is a very weird but very interesting stories. So this collection, I would say, is a mix of surreal and a little bit of magical realism. Not even a little, but like kind of a lot. There's a lot of weird magical elements that are very odd. Definitely have some like speculative elements. Some of my favorite stories are Office Hours, Tomorrow, Los Angeles, and Peking Duck. In Los Angeles, this woman lives in a mansion with her husband, who lives in one wing, her children who live in another wing, who we don't even see at all or who aren't even mentioned. And in another wing lives 100 of her ex-boyfriends. How does that make sense? It doesn't make sense. What I like about Ling Ma is that those things that don't make sense, she just kind of forces you to go with it. In another story called The Office Hour, a teacher and a professor develop a relationship. Although it never goes into the uncomfortable territory that I was expecting, you feel how uncomfortable this relationship could get. So when the student then goes on to become a professor herself, she ends up getting the office that her old professor used to have. And there she discovers a magical portal where time stands still. Her stories are definitely weird, but I like them. They were really well thought of. They include topics of gender identity and race. I think that if you enjoy weird stories and with a little bit of speculative fiction, I think you might actually enjoy this. This one is also very small. So yeah, that's Bliss Montage by Ling Ma. So now we're moving on to the month of October, and in the month of October I read only 2 books. One of them was Bird Box by Josh Malerman and Death of a Bookseller by Alice Slater. Both of these books, I ended up enjoying them a lot. The first book that I read that month was Bird Box by Josh Malerman. I watched the movie before I read the book a few years ago when it first came out on Netflix, and that was actually before I even knew that there was a book. I enjoyed it more than I expected, especially considering the fact that I did watch the movie already. Since it was a few years ago, I didn't quite remember all the details. I remembered some of the bigger aspects of the story. This was a really good book. It was intense from the first page all the way to the end. Josh Malerman definitely knows how to write anxiety into his books, because I was just anxious the whole time that I was reading it. Now, I read Daphne in the summertime and I did enjoy that book. What I didn't like about Daphne was the ending. It just fell really flat for me, the ending. For Bird Box, I would say the ending was a little bit better. There was more that could be said. Not a lot of the conflicts were resolved. We don't know what's out there. We don't know what is killing the people. All we know is that people cannot go outside with their eyes open. That's a very scary thing, you know, not being able to see the sun, not being able to experience nature. The fact that there are also 2 children in this story and that they have never seen sunshine and never seen nature or grass or animals or birds, it makes me really sad for them. I mean, they probably could see like dogs and stuff if the dogs were inside and all that, like the animals that could be inside, but they haven't seen those things in nature. And I can't imagine living a life like that. What they have developed a lot more than many others before them is their hearing. They're able to concentrate so hard that they can hear when things are coming or when things are nearby. Their mother uses them for that aspect. She has taught them that they need to listen. They have to be aware of what's around them by using their ears, and that's really difficult. For me, it was 100% scary book, just not knowing what's out there. You know, the unknown is the scariest thing ever. I definitely enjoyed Bird Box a lot more than I enjoyed Daphne, but it was really only because of the ending that I did. That's why I didn't enjoy Daphne. But this ending wasn't too bad. This one was okay for me, but I definitely still enjoyed this book. I would suggest it to anybody who likes horror, mystery, the unknown, scary monster. Yeah, this is a book for you, I guess. And the last book that I read in the month of October was Death of a Bookseller by Alice Slater. I really enjoyed this book. This book also made me quite anxious. You have 2 main characters. One of them is Rouge. She works at a bookstore and she is a true crime fangirl. A true crime fangirl to the point where it feels very uncomfortable to be around her because her obsession with true crime is really her obsession with the serial killers themselves. She doesn't seem to really care too much about the victims that the serial killers have victimized and or killed. We also have the other main character whose name is, what was her name again? Laura. She has past history that affects her to this day. She gets a new job at the bookstore and everybody seems to really like Laura as well as Rouge, but Laura gets really bad vibes from Rouge and she doesn't want to be around her. She doesn't even want to really talk to her. She finds Rouge to be kind of disgusting. She's always kind of talking about how smelly and gross Rouge is to her. And you know, it seems really mean at first. You're just like, damn Laura, like just give her a chance. You know, maybe if you spoke to her, you'd see that she's, you know, a little nice. But as we get to know Laura, we realize why she is so uncomfortable around Rouge and why she doesn't want to be present when Rouge is around. This book definitely delves into the obsession that some of us may have with true crime. How far are we willing to go with our true crime obsession? And when does it become too much? As we move through the story, Rouge's obsession with Laura really escalates. I'm not gonna say anymore. I think this is definitely worth the read. It definitely kept me on the edge. Yeah, I really liked this one. The ending definitely surprised me, but I wish something else would have happened instead. But that's all I'm gonna say. If you like true crime, if you like unhinged characters, because you definitely get the 2 kind of, both of them just kind of become unhinged. If you like mystery, I think this is the one for you. And that's Death of a Bookseller by Alice Slater. So yeah, those are the books. I'm gonna do a little, those are the books that I read in the month of September and October. It was a slow 2 months for reading, but it was a good 2 months. I really ended up enjoying them. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you my ratings for them. 5 stars for Rouge, 4 stars for Silver Nitrate, 3.5 stars for Evil Under the Sun, 3.5 stars for Spite House, 5 stars for Run Towards the Danger, 4 stars for Really Good Actually, 4.5 stars for Bliss Montage, 4 stars for Bird Box, and 4.5 stars for Death of a Bookseller. All in all, I really enjoyed everything that I read. Even the books that I ended up giving 3.5 stars to, I still enjoyed reading them. Let me know in the comments down below what books you read, if you read any of these ones, and what did you think? Did you like them? Was it 4? Was it 5? Was it 3? Was it 2? Was it 1? Was it a 1? Hey, you never know. We all have different tastes, so that's okay. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm trying to make it to 100 subscribers by the end of this year. So please, if you could subscribe, that would be really great. I would appreciate it so, so much. And I will see you in the next video. Bye. Oh.